Hello and welcome everyone to the complete Poppy Playtime timeline as of Chapter 3. In this timeline I will be referring to events before the chapters themselves and content Mob Entertainment has posted to their socials. I hope you all enjoy this video, and without further ado, let's start from the very beginning. A young inventor by the name of Elliot Ludwig founds the toy making company Playtime Co. This aims to entertain children all around the US. Playtime Co., short for Cooperation, quickly become the #1 toy company in the world. Playtime Co. takes the world by storm due to their unusual and innovative toy designs. Sometime in the 50s they create a very interesting doll named Poppy. She could hold a full conversation with a child. This meant their parents were not only buying their children a toy but also a friend, a feat you couldn't get from any other toy at this time. This was Playtime Co.'s first and biggest hit toy. Poppy opened the door for all the hit toys to come, so it is really no surprise they found all the success they did. In 1995, an employee named Thomas Clark joined Playtime Co., working as a pediatrician for the children that resided in a place Playtime Co. called Playcare. An unfortunate death would occur for Elliot Ludwig during the 60s, although he kept creating despite his loss. This year, two notable employees joined Playtime Co., Jimmy Roth and Leith Pierre. Jimmy worked as the chief marketing officer, who was responsible for promoting the company and its toys to families all across the US, later the world.
My name is Leith Pierre.
While Pierre became the head of innovation at Playtime Co., a position very high up in the company. This year, Elliot also created the Make a Friend machine. This machine was considered one of Elliot's most innovative ideas yet, that surpassed all other feats in the company. It created all the Playtime Co. toys to come without needing any outside intervention. This year, Bron was created. He was a small red dinosaur. He didn't achieve the same success as Poppy, but would later prove his usefulness decades later. Look at this guy. This is Boxy Boo. He was created 5 years after Bron. Unfortunately, Boxy Boo was also considered a commercial failure, not nearly selling as well as Poppy or Bron, and would later not be considered part of the main line of mascots. Candy Cat would become Playtime's newest mascot with the intention of being a unique individual to keep up with the new decade. This year consisted of the first big rejection of a toy idea by Playtime Co. The toy called Kick Me Pool was supposedly rejected due to the presenter being laughed at after presenting said toy as a concept for retail. The toy would later be resubmitted, now under the rename of Push Me Pool. However, the resubmitting would quickly be rejected yet again. I mean, who would want to buy this thing? Huggy Wuggy, the second most influential toy, was created by Playtime Co. 34 years after Poppy. Huggy Wuggy was a toy created to give children hugs with its long arms and welcoming personality. He was quickly considered a signature toy alongside Poppy shortly after his creation. A year after Huggy Wuggy's success, Playtime Co. decided to try and bounce a new toy off of Huggy's success. This toy was none other than Kissy Missy, the female counterpart to Huggy Wuggy. It is unknown how well Kissy Missy sold, but if it was anything like Huggy's success, she probably would have been very successful too. Sometime during the late 80s, Playtime Co. released the Swap-A-Moles. As the name suggests, they were a toy that mixes two animals together. The only known Swap-A-Moles are Cat B and PJ Pugapilla. They both sold well but failed to compare against the selling power of Poppy and Huggy. It was around this time Elliot Ludwig died, leaving a great legacy behind. A scientist named Harley Sawyer, also known as the Doctor, was employed around this time. He found out the world's biggest toy company was doing secret experiments on rats. Elliot had been experimenting on rats, changing their feeding cycles and submerging it in a gel-like mixture made from poppy flowers. He thought the properties of the poppy flower offer life-altering properties, and was attempting to revive the rat after a week of being in the jail. The experiments at this stage had been failing, but he is interested in the idea something larger could have different results. Harley knew the company could go bankrupt if the public found out and they were to get sued, so he decided to try and find a solution to the problem. There was a lawsuit waiting to happen, as lower employees should not know of these experiments, so he proposes the Bigger Bodies Initiative, an initiative that would transform orphans into giant toys that would do jobs, thus cutting costs. He requested to Playtime Co. to oversee and lead the initiative. Playtime Co. founds the game station, with 3 games: a Simon Says game called Musical Memory, a Whack-A-Mole game called Whack-A-Wuggy, and a Statues game, to test their orphans before they entered Playcare. This worked hand in hand with the Bigger Bodies Initiative. Long before this though, Playtime Co. created Playcare, which acted as an orphanage, far below the surface below the main Playtime building. It housed orphans in a manufactured sphere. Elliot believed it was a place an orphan child could muster a smile. It contained a school, house, and play area for the children. The children of Playcare would be sent to the game station to play games, but in reality they were being tested. Each child would have a Playtime toy assigned to them. They would go throughout the 3 games in the game station and would be assessed on brain speed, efficiency, reaction time, problem solving, physical endurance, agility, and speed out of 5 stars from a nearby observation room. The orphans at the time of playing were of course unaware of this, instead thinking they were just playing games. It is unknown exactly when, but sometime around this time, Playtime Co. hired an employee named Stella Graybar. Not much is known about her, other than the fact that she was responsible for the assessment of the children in the game station. She would also receive all the assessment forms of the orphans for review. If the orphan performed well, they would be taken from Playcare and used in experiments related to the Bigger Bodies Initiative. Also, at some point, it is shown Stella was put in charge of Playcare. The doctor was attempting to turn these orphans into their assigned toy, a procedure that was incredibly difficult at the time and required the use of poppy gas. After the Bigger Bodies Initiative was implemented, Playtime was able to use them to complete a variety of jobs and tasks, ranging from security to child management within the game station. There are a lot of failed experiments to make the Bigger Bodies Initiative work. One of them was Experiment 1006, the prototype, created in 1989. The prototype was hostile with people and he was disobedient, so he had to be locked up. He was highly intelligent and had to be monitored constantly. Then the year of 1990 came in, and the doctor had an idea. He created Boxy Boo, and he was the first Bigger Bodies Initiative experiment to work. That's when the doctor had an idea to transfer Boxy Boo to Storage B, so the company would send an employee who was breaking the company's rules there to be killed by Boxy Boo. All of that to tame his appetite for human flesh. Patty Hall was killed by Boxy Boo after discolouring the toys in the Misfit Toys Island, and Rowan was also a victim of Boxy Boo, and probably later Rich, Patty's husband. The original Poppy Playtime doll was in Storage B, and that's where she met Kissy and probably Ollie. This year, a very important event happened on 20th of November. The prototype had been influencing an orphan named Theodore Gramble. He was 7 and was considered troubled. Theodore and the prototype had a close relationship, and Theodore had become friends with the prototype. The Playcare counsellor, Joel Sinclair, believed this to simply be an imaginary friend. Not very unusual for someone his age, so it was overlooked. The prototype had been trying to get Theodore to investigate Playtime Co. He wanted Theodore to open a maintenance store inside Playcare in hopes of escape. However, due to his young age while he was doing so, Theodore was electrocuted while using a Grab Pack 2.0. Joel Sinclair and the paediatrician Thomas Clark concluded that Theodore's friend was not imaginary at all, as 2 people were required to open a maintenance store. Clark even reported seeing the prototype himself. The prototype carried his body to Home Sweet Home for everyone to see it, and the first person who saw it was Thomas Clark. So Dr. Sawyer saw the opportunity, as Theodore was one of the candidates to become Catnap, and as the opportunity arose, using Theodore's body, Playtime Co. created Experiment 188, Catnap, on November 1990. The procedure was said to last 4 hours longer than expected, but was a success, and Theodore Gramble became the monster version of Catnap. And on January 1991, he was transferred to Playcare to act as a protector for the children. The doctor had the idea of going from poppy gel to poppy gas, so Catnap had the ability to throw poppy gas through his mouth. He was going to throw the poppy gas to put the orphans to sleep when it was time, and this poppy substance was going to flow through the orphans' organs, so when they became old enough, they'll be transformed into experiments. A few months after Monster Catnap was a success, a new line of toys called the Smiling Critters. The members were Catnap himself, Dog Day, Bobby Bear Hug, Bubba Bubbaphant, Crafty Corn, Hoppy Hopscotch, Kickin' Chicken, and Piggy Piggy. They were all around Playcare. They received their own cartoon series in order to promote the new line of toys to the public. They were instantly popular and would become the new main mascots of Playcare, as well as introducing new toys for Playtime to use in the Bigger Bodies initiative. The toys line didn't go all smoothly though, and there were some serious problems with the Catnap toy. However, instead of the lavender gas it was supposed to throw out his mouth, it was actually the poppy gas used in Playcare. This caused any child with a Catnap toy to experience violent and unsettling nightmares, like the children in Playcare. This gained media attention and Playtime received bad press, so they were forced for Catnap's line of toys to be recalled and he was removed from the Smiling Critters. However, Theodore, aka the monster version of Catnap, stayed within Playcare, which was unknown to the outside public. A few months after the procedure, Leith Pierre showed concern to do with the relationship 188 aka Catnap and 1006, the prototype, share. Apparently, when in the same room, Catnap follows the prototype around like a lost puppy, and the prototype doesn't seem to mind, or at least doesn't show it. Smiling Critters plushies were given to orphans to calm them. Catnap treated the prototype as a god because he had saved his life. This year, another toy was made, this time Mummy Longlegs. She had elongated, stretchy arms and legs, like a spider. The main reason for this was Playtime wanting to test their new stretchy material. She was a success, and so Playtime made Daddy Longlegs and Baby Longlegs. On March 21st, 1991, we also received this interview between Leith Pierre and an employee named Marcus, played by Jacksepticeye. In this interview, which I'll play now, we find out that not all employees knew about the Bigger Bodies initiative. So here you go.
Mind if I film this?
Oh, not at all, sir.
That's what I like to hear. So, Marcus, what happened?
You see, I was heading home for the day when my apars realised that I left me bloody wallet in the cafeteria. So I'm running through the lobby, and that's when I see it. A mop handle lodged under the innovation wing gate.
So what'd you do, Marcus?
Well, I just thought I'd nab the bloody yoke and be on me merry way.
And?
Well, I'm reaching for the thing, and the mop handle jolts on its own. Had me scared stiff. I thought I was the only one there. So I took a peek beneath the gate, and some massive bloody thing was dothering about the bloody hallway.
Thing? You're sure it wasn't a person?
Ain't no person that's 50 feet long with 1,000 legs.
Marcus, you're losing me. Maybe you just saw a bunch of people walking by.
Look, it wasn't people, alright? I haven't a bloody notion what it was, but it wasn't human.
Who have you told about this? Besides me, obviously.
Just you, sir. Obviously.
Okay, I'll have security skim the cameras and take a look.
What? There's a massive bloody monster! Skimming ain't gonna get rid of it!
You're out of line, Marcus. We make toys, not monsters.
It should be noted, around this time many other experiments were successful and helped out the factory in different ways. One of them was experiment 1170, Huggy Wuggy, working as the factory's security guard, while experiment 1222, Mummy Longlegs, serves as the game station host and carer for the children. On March 30th, 1991, the head of IT, Rowan Stoll, noticed nanny cams in Huggy's eyes. They were actually his human eyes, and he complains it to Leith Pierre. However, Rowan soon after that apologised to Mr. Pierre, and he thought that it was just Huggy's eyes popped out. However, he started to investigate more about the factory. In May 1991, it is likely by this time Rowan found out about the Bigger Bodies initiative and now is attempting to go back on his original report. He claimed the maintenance guy forgot to lock Huggy's eyes in place, causing them to dangle out. A clear lie. Not long after Rowan Stoll was planning to expose the Bigger Bodies initiative to the world before fleeing Playtime, he was attempted murder by loosening his car wheel bolts, nearly resulting in a car crash. Leith Pierre has become a completely different person to him and is clearly afraid of him. Before Rowan can upload his findings, he is killed by Boxy Boo. In 1991, Clark was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer 6 months prior. This led to his willingness to volunteer for an experiment. The experiment was that of the Bigger Bodies initiative and concerned the local Playtime Co. mascot, Bron. After volunteering for the experiment, he was accepted in as the subject. After the transferring had concluded, Thomas woke up in a small, broken Bron toy. Tests discovered he showed much more disorientation than the other experiments. Video showed Thomas worryingly moving his eyes around in horror. Due to this, methods of temptation were cut in half. After being put in the same room that the other experiments were kept in, the other experiments began to realise he wasn't an orphan and that he worked for Playtime Co. Thomas looked around the room at the other experiments, some toys big, others small, like him. After staring into the eyes of PJ Pugapilla, Boxy Boo's music box faintly played before Boxy grabbed Thomas and his vision blackened. The research team later discovered Thomas's bloodied body lying in the middle of the room on his side. His internal organs had been severely damaged, with the entirety of his larynx and thyroid completely devoured. They rushed him into surgery for stabilisation, which took approximately 12 hours. After the surgery was complete, the team decided to keep him in a small containment cell away from the other experimentations. On June 18th, Huggy Wuggy is seen on cameras making an escape attempt from the factory in the middle of the night. However, 2 employees pressed the alarm and a group of specialists almost immediately went on search for him. After just over 4 hours of searching, the group of specialists finally could capture and sedate him, but the damage had already been done. 5 specialists were found dead and 6 were missing. Leith Pierre blamed this incident on staff negligence. In 1993, BoogieBot was created and released. It was said to have been a big success with customers. August 8th, 1995. There is probably no date more important than this in the entire Poppy Playtime timeline, as on this day the prototype or experiment 1006 set up an incident later known as the Hour of Joy by the remaining toys. On this day, every single human in the factory was murdered by the toys after they suddenly turned hostile to all humans. This happened not long after the prototype went missing within Playtime Co. This coincided with the transportation of Kissy Missy to Playcare to further push the Bigger Bodies initiative, but she broke from her constraints during the Hour of Joy and murdered the employees tasked with moving her. Our current state of knowledge, we only really know one person apart from the main protagonist in 2005 survived. This was none other than Leith Pierre, who would later send specialists back into Playtime Co. during Project Playtime. The toys would then go on to dispose the human corpses by dragging them down to the deepest depths of the factory where they would never be found. They actually used them as a source of food to stay alive. Leith Pierre would later send a group of specialists in to collect toy parts, thus having Project Playtime. They were hunted by Huggy Wuggy, Mummy Longlegs and Boxy Boo. Eventually, survivors stopped being sent back in the factory and the Bigger Bodies initiative therefore came to a close. This led to a food shortage for the monsters that resided in the Playtime factory, and therefore they started consuming the smaller experiments to stay alive. The prototype eventually finds the original Poppy Playtime doll in Storage B. She was the first experiment to work and the reason why every experimentation happened. He locked her up in a glass case somewhere hidden in the factory. The following weeks after the Hour of Joy, Catnap locks Miss Delight and her sisters in the school. Delight thought she heard breathing outside the main door and built her weapon with pencils and a ruler named Barb. Delight's sisters cut her off from food, so she starts to go insane. Eventually, her insanity made her think that Barb was an actual entity, and Barb tells Delight to kill her sisters. So she does that, and she was the only one that remained in the school. Delight finds the main door unlocked and discovered Catnap, thus making a truce with him. That was the timeline up till the games. So as of recording, we're up to chapter 3, so now I will give a description of all the games set in the present day. 2005. 2005, the player, an unnamed ex-employee of Playtime Co., receives an unexpected letter one day along with a VHS tape, which features a tampered version of the vintage Poppy commercial from the mail. Despite the unusual and almost childlike misspelled letters assurance seen in the written title, the letter states that the missing employees are still here. After watching the VHS tape, the player finally decides to return to the factory to search for the company's missing staff, following the instruction to reach the poppy flower to do so. Upon arriving at the abandoned factory through the main entrance, the player obtains and inserts a green VHS tape to the VCR, where it plays Leith Pierre's recording of warning any intruders about his security's wilder aspect. After listening to Pierre's final warning, the player ignores his warning and unlocks the security room. There, with the help of a blue VHS tape, they obtain a revolutionary and invaluable grab pack, though lacking its red hand. Once the player takes the grab pack, they use it to enter the main lobby, where they are greeted by a giant statue of Huggy Wuggy. On the left side of the statue is a door that is protected by the blue hand grab pack sensor. However, the power cuts out upon scanning the blue hand on the sensor. Mysteriously, a key appears in Huggy's hand, where it was not present earlier. This unlocks the power room and the player reconnects the wires using the grab pack, turning the power back on. However, exiting the room reveals that the statue of Huggy Wuggy has mysteriously disappeared, leading the player to investigate. As they make their way towards the warehouse, they find a yellow VHS tape and the necessary batteries, spotting Huggy peering at them through a vent. However, upon making eye contact with Huggy for some time, the vents close as Huggy pulls himself back. After successfully connecting the batteries, the player obtains the red hand and unlocks the vent door, leading to a short puzzle that advances them further into the factory. Upon reaching the Make a Friend area, they activate the Make a Friend machines, ultimately creating a Catbee toy that must be used as a keycard to open the Nobody Leaves Without a Toy gate. However, as they approach the shadowy hallway, a monstrous Huggy Wuggy suddenly appears and chases them down, forcing the player to flee into the vents. The player must crawl through the maze-like ventilation system, whilst also avoiding getting caught by Huggy, and navigate a series of obstacles before reaching a set of catwalks. As Huggy attempts to break down the vent door, they spot a large crate above them, and they topple it onto Huggy, causing him to fall into the seemingly endless void to his death. Finally, the player walks along the catwalks, where they pick up a black VHS tape and use it in the corresponding VCR to the right. It mentions the prototype. After watching it, the player eventually reaches the poppy flower that is seen at the end of the vintage Poppy commercial. Upon opening the doors, the player discovers a sparsely furnished shrine dedicated with a child's room-like theme. After making their way through a lengthy corridor, they found no employees, only a locked door case containing Poppy Playtime doll. Without a second thought, the player opens the case with their grab pack. Upon unlocking the case, the lights briefly flicker before shorting out, with the player losing consciousness as well. Before drifting off, they hear Poppy acknowledging her release, marking the conclusion of this chapter. Chapter 2. After the player wakes up in the Poppy room from Chapter 1, they follow Poppy Playtime, who in response to their rescue decides to help them escape via the game station located deep into the facility. They venture further into the factory and open Elliot Ludwig's office with the Poppy key. They climb down through the vents and try to turn back on the power. Poppy is already trying to turn it back on as we run into her. She explains that she can lead us out through the game station as she knows the train code. This plan is soon vandalised as the chapter's main antagonist, Mummy Longlegs, assaults and snatches Poppy, forcing the player to drop down to attempt to save her. The player ventures further to try and save Poppy and eventually arrives in the station. Here, Mummy Longlegs confronts the player. As we try to open a door with our red grab-pack hand, she snatches it, stating that in order to escape, the player must play 3 games that become increasingly more difficult, as it wouldn't be fun to just give the train code. The player first needs to create a green grab pack 2.0 hand to once again complete the grab pack. The first game is Musical Memory, a Simon Says-like game where the player has to select the correct buttons before Bunny can kill them, a bit like Parts and Service in FNAF Security Breach. This will gradually get faster until the game malfunctions and an emergency stop is required. Mummy thinks the game broke and gives us the first part of the train code in return. The player moves further to get back to the game station and finds himself in a warehouse full of rejected toys, where there is a switch to unlock the door that leads back to the game station. The second game is Whack-a-Wuggy, a game similar to Whack-a-Mole where the player must hit the mini Huggies with their grab pack as they come out of the holes in the walls. As the game goes on, the faster the Huggies pop out, but the player manages to fend them off long enough for the victory over the second game. In return, Mummy gives us the second part of the train code. The player must then make their way back to the factory and comes across a locked gate. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette appears as Huggy. That isn't Huggy Wuggy. Kissy Missy is a female version of Huggy Wuggy who seems to be friendly. She assists us by opening the gate from the other side. What a nice guy. As we carry on, we manage to make our way to a VHS player where an employee says he saw a 50-foot long monster with a lot of legs. Foreshadowing? Played perfectly by Jacksepticeye, I just want to say. Anyway, we make our way back to the game station just in time for the final game. The third game is Statues, a game similar to Red Light Green Light where the player navigates a maze while being pursued by PJ Pugapilla. The player stops when the lights turn on and can move when the lights go off. PJ is a mixture of a caterpillar and a pug with thousands of legs. He fails to capture us in time as we smash a window to get our ass out of there. The player escapes the third game, obviously rigged as the ending is blocked by debris. This infuriates Mummy and starts hunting down the player, claiming that they cheated and that she's going to play one last game with them, calling it hide and seek. Mummy starts counting 10, 9, 8 as we belt it down the hallway as fast as our little human legs will take us. Mummy finds us a few times and we have to hide in the vent and an incinerator so she doesn't catch us. But after we pull a lever, she reveals herself fully and opens the chase. She is right behind us for most of it, so we don't have time to think, we just have to run. After surviving Mummy's relentless chase, we get to the bottom of the long hall with a blue grab pack door at the end. As we're opening it, Mummy belts it down the hallway, and just in time the player manages to open the door to a room with a grinder. They trap Mummy in the grinder and pull the lever, killing her. After this, a mysterious claw-like hand appears from the bottom of the partially closed door and drags Mummy's severed torso into the dark. The prototype, Experiment 1006. The player is led back to the game station, navigating Bay 9, leads them to find a trapped Poppy who has final part of the train code. We then proceed to free her. Poppy then boards the train while the player inputs the train code correctly and the train begins to move. However, Poppy, witnessing their outstanding agility and intelligence, deems that they are too perfect to lose and changes the train's direction at the last second. Poppy then states she had much time to think and reflect and that together she and the player can set things right. Before she can finish, the sound of a digital alarm clock cuts her off, leaving her only enough time to exclaim, "What is?" before the audio is cut off. The train begins to accelerate at an alarming pace. The player manages to use the emergency stop, but the train derails and crashes, making them start to lose consciousness, but not before they see a sign for play care. After the train crash, the player is recovered and thrown down by Catnap into a trash compactor. After escaping, the player makes their way through a series of maintenance tunnels while Catnap stalks us. We hear a phone ringing in the distance in the process of escaping, finding and answering the phone. The player finds themselves communicating with an unknown character who states his name to be Ollie. Through this newfound phone, still working despite being unused for 10 years, suspicious, Ollie promises to guide the player while explaining the ongoing situation. The player returns to the train and proceeds to enter Playcare through Elliot's Express, where they hear a speech by Elliot Ludwig that introduces his ideology and thoughts during the creation of Playcare. Upon arriving at Playcare, Ollie gives the player a key to the gas reduction zone from the central statue building thingy. I really don't know what it is. Anyway, poppy gas, which is used to power the building, but also produce a gas called the red smoke, in brackets, poppy gas. After obtaining an enhanced version of the grab pack and activating the console, the player goes out. Ollie tasks the player to reactivate the power and use backup generators from several locations to power the gas production zone to reach Catnap. Ollie directs them to enter Home Sweet Home first, the abandoned residence for all the orphan children. After entering Home Sweet Home, the player inhales the red smoke, falling into a nightmare, one eerily close to the waking world. They make their way through a maze of seemingly endless corridors, some even crossing over themselves whilst Catnap stalks us. We also come upon audio recordings of Playtime Co. news coverage, claiming that a dead child has been found on Elliot Ludwig's estate. Throughout it all, Catnap stalks the player, watching them from the shadows and disappearing when spotted. At last, the player reaches the end of the corridors where they watch a Welcome to Playtime tape, welcoming employees to the Playtime Co. factory. The tape then becomes more and more disturbing, beginning to call out the player specifically for returning and telling them of the incomprehensible horrors that now inhabit the factory. The player is forced to look at the screen until a distorted nightmare Huggy crawls out the screen. The player, in a futile attempt, tries to run away but is soon caught and eaten. They wake up in the real Home Sweet Home, discovering the invaluable gas mask soon after. After activating Home Sweet Home's generator and leaving with the help of the gas mask, Kissy Missy attempts to kill the player until she's stopped by Poppy. A determined Poppy explains that the player needs to get rid of the monsters who tortured them, warning them that the prototype will kill the player if they try and escape, and that he needs to be destroyed. Soon after, Ollie tells the player to go into the school to restore power to it. While trying to turn on the generator, the player encounters Miss Delight, the only remaining teacher of the school, who ate her sister due to her insatiable hunger. Miss Delight continuously threatens the player through the school's PA system, and after they turn the power back on, she damages the generator before chasing the player through various corridors of classrooms, only moving when they look away. As the player nears the school's maintenance exit, Miss Delight abandons her movement rule and charges at the player, who brings a gate down and instantly kills her. The player obtains the orange hand and makes their way into the caverns of Playcare. There, after completing several puzzles, they see Catnap worshipping a shrine of the prototype. Catnap doesn't notice the player vanishing after they look away. The player then enters the playhouse through the caves, where they fend off a horde of ruined critters via the orange hand. On their way out, they encounter a locked up Dog Day, who explains that the entirety of Playcare is Catnap's playground for destruction, murder and control. Dog Day also explains that Catnap takes orders from the prototype, worshipping him and killing anyone who refuses to obey. Shortly before his monologue ends, the ruined critters infest Dog Day before hijacking his body and chasing the player throughout it. We get chased by Dog Day through a large play area known as the Playhouse. The player escapes to possess Dog Day, last hearing his screams before taking a slide out of the playhouse. Ollie then sends the player to the counsellor's office as their final objective, where they find and watch an emergency tape of a warning issued to Playtime Co. employees on August 8, 1995, warning them of a hostile force and to evacuate. The tape is cut short and a new message ominously appears. Open the doors now, the hour of joy has arrived. The player briefly returns to the caverns as they made their way through the counsellor's office. As they enter a smoke-infested area while trying to power the building, the player is ambushed by Catnap, who knocks the gas mask off their face and sends the player into a dream state where Poppy asks the player rhetorical questions with various visions of shadow children in Playcare. The visions conclude with Huggy standing motionless in the distance. Then Poppy says, "No, you don't." Then the prototype's hand comes out towards the player as they stand in front of Huggy's stand. Then they wake up. After rerouting the counsellor's office back up power to the statue, Ollie gives the player the final battery required to power the gas production zone. They return to the zone, but Catnap ambushes them by filling the room with red smoke, chasing the player into an elevator. Player enters the safe room and is required to fend off Catnap for 3 minutes as he constantly toys with the player via hallucinations. A green grab pack hand receiver eventually overcharges and the player utilizes this to eliminate Catnap at the hand sacrifice. Catnap is electrocuted and inadvertently lights himself on fire, exhaling the red smoke. The prototype's arm emerges from the ceiling, offering to assist Catnap before brutally taking his life. Returning to the gas production zone, the player uses the battery to charge the console, finally diverting the gas and powering the area. The player then encounters Poppy, who shows them a tape containing CCTV footage of what happened to the player's co-workers, an incident the toys call the Hour of Joy. The tape shows Huggy Wuggy, Mummy Longlegs, Boxy Boo, Mr. Light, Catnap and other toys under the prototype's orders, indiscriminately killing everyone present in the factory at the time. Poppy then explains that she had been thrown into the case the player found her in at the time. She heard everything that happened and has since been distraught by the needless slaughter of so many lives, including those who were innocent on that day. Therefore, she had vowed to put an end to the prototype for what he has done.
We'll send the lift back up. Just hold tight, okay?
Poppy and the player take an elevator deeper into the factory while Kissy Missy stays behind to activate it. As the elevator lowers into the ground, Kissy is attacked by an unknown entity and Poppy turns the elevator around to save her, but the door concealing the elevator closes, stranding the player and Poppy in the deeper levels of the factory and leaving Kissy's fate and possible death uncertain.
Go faster! Kissy!
And well, there you have it. That is everything we know as of 2024. Chapter 3. I hope you enjoyed and tell me if you want to see an updated version once Chapter 4 has released. As always, thanks for watching and I hope you enjoyed. See you guys soon and thanks if you made it to this point, by the way. If you made it here, by the way, send the emoji with sunglasses in the chat so then I know. Thank you and bye.